Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Aquarius, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of October 2025. I hope you're well. I'm using the Tarot of the Divine for you today. Here it is. Before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's via the first link in the description box below. That will take you to Selfie. Alternatively, you can come and join my private community over on the Circle platform. It's called the Order of the Phoenix, and it is populated by an extraordinary group of people. I really don't say that lightly. There you can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost, and that also includes weekly energy readings. Excuse me. If you join at the higher tier, then you can come participate in the classes that we've got running over there, which are always fascinating. They're not just taught by me, they're taught by other people too. So there's tarot, but we also have magic from lots of different perspectives. I think the next class that we've got lined up is on servitors. So if that sounds like it might be of interest to you, you know what to do with the link below. Right, Aquarius, let's have a look and see what's going on with you. There was, just before I start, before I sit down to do any kind of reading at all, well, I do sit down, I connect with the energy. I do that through a short meditation, and there were waves of pressure with you. I didn't see anything. I didn't have any particular words given, but this waves of pressure was really very strong, and it sort of ebbed and flowed. It was creating a tension, which is to say a tension within my head. But it wasn't necessarily uncomfortable. It feels like the friction that comes before making a big decision or that sort of thing, actually. Like coming to the point where you're like, no, I'm ready to do this now. Kind of oscillating backwards and forwards on something. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. I'd be interested to see if that shows up reflected in the reading. So can I have 3 cards for Aquarius, please? Interesting. We've got lots of cards that are flipping, but not so many are coming out. Let's have a look at the flipped cards just for a second. We've got the Knight of Pentacles, Virgo energy, very strong at the moment. There was another one. There are Hanged Man. Interesting. Speaking about a change of position, or certainly a change of perception with the Hanged Man coming on. That's actually one of the cards that's just come up in the weekly energies reading that I did for Circle. And the Chariot. Movement. So let's try that one again. Come on. Let's give us a card for Aquarius, please. There we go. Right. Straight in with the big guns. We have the Death card in your recent past. That represents the sign of Scorpio and the energy of Pluto. Somewhat on point for you. Right. What about current energy? Thank you. We have the 5 of Cups. Also Scorpionic energy. Interesting. And what about what's coming towards? Thank you. We have the 4 of Wands. Now, it wasn't quite set. I'm going to leave it like that, but we have the 8 of Wands at the bottom of the deck. Now, the 8 of Wands for me is about acceleration, it's about amplification, it's about an increase in momentum. But because it's also Mercury in Sagittarius, it does have this communication component to it too. It can be thoughts beginning to move faster about a particular thing, perhaps what you are going to do moving forward. But it can also talk about, fast communication, like coming into you. So where it's the 8 of Wands, you can see that sometimes representing things like email and text messages and messaging platforms backwards and forwards, all that kind of thing. Messaging is pretty much instantaneous nowadays, right? Anyway, so but the point is it's building up in speed, and I think the 8 of Wands is quite an interesting card when you look at it across multiple different tarot decks, because sometimes they're being, I always get apogee and perigee the wrong way around, but right, there's a point where it kind of reaches a point where it's not going up anymore and it starts to come down again, and it differs amongst the tarot cards, like where they show that in the cycle. With this one, they're very much coming in on something. So again, we've got this sense of things coming down to a point, but definitely with the energy of momentum behind it. Now, I'm going to pull out some clarifiers before we move any further forward, which is to say, before I prattle on anymore. Because the Four of Wands doesn't feel like it's quite set yet. It feels like the things that happen for you in October are the things that contribute to your idea of, or maybe your execution of, what the home space is for you. Because the Four of Wands for me is a card of home. It's a card of not necessarily your four walls, right, but the people that feel like home, and the situations that feel like home. It's a place of comfort and joy, whether that is literal or a kind of figurative thing, you know, a kind of ephemeral space, if you will. But the point is, it is foundational. Now, we've got a transformation here. I am going to pull some clarifiers out, I promise. We've got a transformation here. We've got a sense of possibly loss here, where things aren't quite what we thought they were. And then we've got the energy of kind of stepping back a little bit with the Four, going from the 5 to the 4, where we are shoring up foundations because of some sort of big movement outwardly. So let's get some cards out anyway. Tell me about the Death card. What is this here for Aquarius? Right, we have the Hanged Man. It's been showing up quite a bit today. And the Four of Swords. Tell me about the Five of Cups. Thank you. We have the Strength card. It's Leo, and the Empress, that's Taurus or Libra. We're in Libra season right now, interestingly. Tell me about the Four of Wands, please. We have Five of Pentacles, the Devil in reverse, and the Knight of Cups in reverse, which is an interesting combination. We have the Five of Cups again at the bottom of the deck. Now, one of the things that is coming through very, very strongly from this reading to me is that there is a change of direction up ahead. That's really, really strong. But it's almost like you've got to lean into what is really uncomfortable about the trajectory that you're on to get to the point to realise that this is not aligned with you, and now you're going off in a different direction. You know, the Eight of Wands and the Five of Cups seems to be pushing something to almost like a peak disappointment for you, which makes you go, no, fuck this, I'm going off this direction, I'm going to go do this instead. I am not sure at this point where that disappointment is lying, whether it's in some sort of situation that you're in with a group of people that you're involved in, you know, disappointment with your spouse, your friends, whatever. But there's a sense of that reaching that peak point where that frustration that I was talking about, those waves of pressure, kind of push you to a point where you start to choose to do something different. You know, like, I'm going that way. I can't deal with this as it is. It's not in alignment with me, and I think that's quite a strong message from the energies of these cards right now. So we'll start over here with the Death card. Like I said, it represents the sign of Scorpio, and it is innately, it's about transformation, right? It's about the death of one thing and the beginning of another. And we don't often hear people talking about that beginning aspect with the Death card. But in fact, you know, when we've got this sort of transformational energy, what it's doing is it's creating space. Now, the Death card could represent a change that has already happened for you, some sort of transformation that has already occurred. Or it could be speaking to the stage being set for the transformation that's incoming. Because I think when we change things outside of ourselves, it is because there has been first some sort of initiating change within. And I think we've got perhaps a within change that might have been very, very subtle for you, that is now kind of accelerating towards this peak discomfort. And then it's like, well, this whole situation, it's not aligned with me anymore, I'm going that way. Now, a lot of this year has been about emotions for you, Aquarius, and I know that that's been challenging, but I do think there's an energy of digging really deep here, Aquarius, and I don't think it's quite as catastrophic as you might expect with the double Five of Cups. I don't think it's that. I think there's a realization, and I think there's disappointment associated with that realization, but I think it clears the path for you as per the death card, right? It's clearing out a lot of space in front of you for you to do something that feels much more aligned. And so it's a net benefit in terms of how you feel, because it's a net positive. But it's almost like you've got to touch that frustration, that disappointment first before you're like, fuck this, going over there, I'm going to go do that thing, which then feels much more comfortable for you than where you are currently. The Hanged Man on its side is very interesting, because the Hanged Man is a card that, generally speaking, speaks to us surrendering to effectively a neutralized state. Right, there is no movement when the Hanged Man shows up. It is the most passive card in the tarot. It does represent the sign of Pisces, which is where the North Node is right now, right? And so when the Hanged Man shows up in the upright, we are surrendering to the energies, we're surrendering to the transformation, we're surrendering to, whatever this, higher level intelligence that seems to rule the world kind of wants from us, whether your word for that is God, source, creator, universe, whatever, right? It doesn't really matter. There's something about the surrendering to the energies of the moment, losing the resistance to the energies of the moment that the Hanged Man represents. And he says, okay, right, there is something out there that sees this a little more clearly than I do. Big picture stuff, right? And if I lose my resistance to what I think it is in that moment, I have an opportunity to transcend it, move beyond it, and move into something that is much more beneficial for me, because ultimately the universe is a generative force. It's not a punitive one, right? So we've got that kind of idea of a neutral state that is being held whenever the Hanged Man shows up. But when a neutral force shows up in a neutral position, like, what does that really mean? Does it cancel itself out? I don't know. The way that I see sideways cards quite often is that it's an energy that's sort of shuffling into view, but it isn't yet active. It's neutral. It's there. It's waiting for something to tip it one way or the other. And as yet, those circumstances don't exist that would tip it one way or the other. Now, I think if the Death card is about creating the space, allowing the transformation, then I think, to be fair, Aquarius, I have to say that the Hangman on its side would represent some sort of residual resistance that is still ongoing, because this would be the perfect representation of an energy of change and surrender to that change. Here we might have a realization that a period of suspension that we have been in is now coming to an end, because the death process itself has come to an end. It's completed its work, right? And now we can give ourselves permission to get off the tree. We don't have either of those when it's showing up like this. It's like the process isn't complete, because in some way or another we are still resistant to that process. And then we have the Four of Swords. Now, the Four of Swords for me, it's a Libra card, right? But obviously, it's your element. It's a card for me of meditation. It's a card of mental peace. It's a card of healing. It's a card of all of those things. And it's often quite interesting to see where the representations of the elements are, how they are distributed in the imagery of the card, right? So I've got Four of Swords cards where all four swords are in the same position and they are together, and there is that kind of foundational energy to it, right? It's more clearly signposted that it is a foundational energy. Then there are other cards where we have a separation of those artifacts, right? So here we've got the Three of Swords and they're all pointing down, as you would expect for the Three of Swords, representing that collision between facts, reason, logic, information, and an emotional state that is held, right? And we know that it is the puncturing of that, the addition to an inescapable truth that causes the popped bubble, right? So here are the Three of Swords. And then we have a neutral sword at the top, just here, just sitting there, vibing. neither up nor down. And realistically, we want that sword up. It's a fairly arbitrary rule, but I've noticed it, certainly in the Waite Smith book, but in other decks too, that swords up good, swords down bad. Right, so we got 3 swords that are down. We've got some issues here between perhaps what we think and what we feel, not quite aligned, or maybe we're in a state of recovery from new things that have come up. But I would say that neutral Ace of Swords that's sitting across the top of the other 3 is still not quite sure what we think about that thing. And this is the thing, Aquarius, I think because you're still not sure about what you think about what has come up recently, it means that there are still some aspects of something that you are resisting that are trying to clear out of the way. I have an Aquarius South node, right? And if I don't understand something inside out, I can't let it go. And I do feel like that's what's going on here. Now, what that 3 of Swords represents is going to be different for each of you Aquarians, right? Don't try and shoehorn the reading. Take it as it resonates to you. But it feels like there has been some sort of collision between the facts of the matter and what you thought was going on, and you still haven't quite worked out what it means. And it's like, well, I can't let it go until I understand it. Now, there is a possibility that in that very process itself, what we're doing is subverting the energy of the Hanged Man. It would make perfect sense then, right? Because the message of the Hanged Man is surrender and submission and acceptance, very Piscean kind of themes here. And because there is a point at which we can't let it go because we don't quite understand it, it hasn't been fully processed yet, willfully standing in the way of the Hanged Man, right? Subverting the energies of the Hanged Man and saying, well, I'll let it go when I understand it, is not working with Pisces energy, right? It's not accepting it for what it is, and surrendering our need to deeply understand what it is before we let it go, right? So that in some ways is the staging for what is happening next, right? We know that there is an adjutant somewhere, certainly in terms of what you understand and all that kind of thing. And then we move into your current energy, where we have the 5 of Cups. Now, this energy is almost doubled down on because it's the shadow card at the bottom of the deck here, which is saying that the 5 of Cups is a really important component of this process for you. The 5s represent instability. They represent a kind of fractured version of the energy. You know, the received wisdom of this card is that it is about loss and grief, and certainly you would see this coming up for, you know, loss and bereavement and all those kind of things, and we can experience a sense of loss without it being necessarily a person who's died. I just want to make that really clear. You know, I've in my own life, you know, I realised several years after divorce that I needed to grieve the loss of my marriage, even though it was the best fucking thing that ever happened to me to get away from it. It wasn't about the person, it was about what I thought my life would hold moving forwards on the day that I got married, for example, right? So we have here these 2 cups that remain in the back there, and they're nice and stable, and they are still capable of holding the water, which is the symbol for emotions within the tarot. But we've got somebody here who is absolutely trapped by the loss of the 3 cups that are down here. Right. Now, I said that there was an instability and there was like far too much. It was very chaotic energy, right? The energy of 5. And we can see that in overexertion, for example, with the 5 of Wands, or active conflict in terms of the 5 of Swords. But the 5 of Cups is unique amongst the 5s in so much as it represents a stasis where there should be a flow. I've often said to people, right, when you get stuck in the grieving process, when you don't feel like you can move forwards, it's because you've lost sight of the fact that that is a process. It's not a state that you are supposed to stay in, it's a process that you move through. And this comes up when we really are feeling emotionally stagnant about something, you know, whether or not we are mourning a loss. So well, you can see that arm that's reaching up from the water there. It's like there's a prevention of the ability to be able to move on when this card is here. and just absolutely consumed with feelings of perhaps shame, grief, bereavement, guilt. All of these things are indicated by the Five of Cups cards, right? But certainly in your case, peak emotional pressure. I think that's the way that I would like to put it to you, because I felt those waves of pressure right at the beginning. And it's clarified by the energies of strength and the Empress. Now, this is very, very interesting, Aquarius. Not least because, and we have some really big energies of the universe at play on you beneath the surface, right? It's actually beneath the surface of your emotions. It's like there's something here that's trying to keep you stuck. This big energy that's working at you beneath the surface, major arcana energy, is indicating both, well, expansion, actually, in both cards. We see that the strength card for me represents Leo. It talks about personal growth, personal expansion. It can talk about the healing journey as well, and we get lots of indications of that, just not just from the imagery of the card, but also the colouring on the card. I always think she looks like she's trying to heal that wolf right there, right? But it's the process by which we become bigger than the problem that we face that this card is talking about here. It's not about making problems smaller, it's making us more capable, expanding our abilities, right? In the Empress card, we also have these notions of expansion, right? She's depicted as pregnant, so there is something gestating here, something that is waiting to come into view, not yet quite ready to be born. But we also have themes of abundance and gratitude and this sort of thing, right? Expanding our experience of these things. So underneath the surface of what feels incredibly frustrating, which may be characterized by loss, or, it just feels emotionally pressurized, is an energy that is fracturing specifically to allow you to grow a little bit more, right? Who was it Rumi? I can't remember, right? The cracks are where the light get in. It might be somebody else, I can't remember, but it's got that sort of feel to it. It's like what has been rigid, and wherever you've got Scorpio energy, Leo energy, Taurus energy, Aquarius energy, you fixed signs, it feels like often it needs to be broken, like quite literally broken, before we will give ourselves permission to flex and expand and move beyond that. Because to be fixed is to be exactly what it sounds, to be fixed, right? To withstand the pressures at play on us at any given point. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like fixed signs are so strong. Right? You're carrying a lot of weight with things, carrying quite literally the season that you govern. In the case of Aquarius, it's like carrying the winter, where the light is at its dimmest, right? Certainly not at its strongest. That would be Leo, your opposite sign. So we've got difficulties, big difficulties. But because the major arcana is happening beneath the surface, because the exterior totem of this, if you will, is that energy of the Five of Cups, it's saying something about our emotional rigidity on a particular topic is the thing that needs to crack, so that we've got the room to expand, to grow into it. Now, if we come back to this Five of Cups down here, you can see how they are, similar message cards. We've got, grief and mourning and all that kind of thing, right? Interestingly, we've got a moon up here and we've got a sun up here, which is quite an interesting difference, because it's then not actually focusing it on simply the conscious mind or simply the unconscious mind. We actually have both luminaries showing up, saying, as within, so without, that kind of hermetic quality of this is not just a conscious mind problem, but a subconscious mind problem. And we need to marry the two together to kind of come to the realizations that we need to. But the additional energy then of the Eight of Wands, which is the amplification, acceleration, it's pushing out. There is an expansion with that because it is Sagittarius. It's pointing to this fracture that needs to happen to give us space to push everything out, right out of the way, So then when we come to the energies of October, we have got the promise of the creation of a new foundation, right? Like I said, the Five of Cups to the Four of Wands is, at least from a numerological perspective, a step down. Not in a way that is pejorative. It's not like, oh God, up there's best and down there's worst. You know, everything is in a cycle, and I would imagine that it kind of moves like that more than like that, you know. It's speaking to there being more energy being put into creating what feels good than holding on to what has been lost or what has felt frustrating or not very good. It's like there's a space here that wants to be created so that more energy can be put into whatever the Four of Wands is for you. We've talked about it in terms of home, because that feels like a very, very strong indication for me from that card. And to take it off the quite literal where you live, and consider the question of, like, if you had some really, really good news, like who are the three people that you would ring to tell them, because you would know that they would want to share that information with you and celebrate with you. That's very Four of Wands energy, right? But equally, if something really, really shit happened, who would you reach out to, like, for reassurance, to even just discuss it with? Who would those people be? Now, for some of you, if the answer is no one, there's possibly that immediately an indication as to where the fracture needs to happen, right? Where the loss of rigidity needs to occur. But either way, just speaking from a kind of metaphorical position, like having an awareness of those, who would those people be? Who are you that intimate with that you would share the good and the bad and all that kind of thing? That's very much the essence of the Four of Wands for me. But again, it is foundational. And I think the reason that it's not showing up fully in its upright is because there's a little bit more work to do here before we get to that point. Now, I like the fact that the Devil is in reverse. The Devil is represents the sign of Capricorn, but it also represents Saturn. And Saturn is currently retrograde in the sign of Pisces, which is, it's a neighbour sign to you. But when the Devil card shows up, what we have is we have a loss of fear. And the corollary of that is that we have a breakdown of the rigid structures that the Devil has put in place that tell us we cannot do something, or we're not strong enough to do that, or we can't move in this direction, right? The shorthand phrase is, it's a loss of fear. You're not afraid of the same things that you were afraid of before. But it's the corollary of the action that flows therefrom that I am most interested in, because there seems to have been some examination of self going on here that leads to a realization that where you were is not where you want to stay, and in fact there is something deeper that you want to build. Now, the Wands cards also talk about creativity, and they talk about passion, and they talk about activity, right? Just as we see here with this Eight of Wands, right? But to have a really good springboard, right, is to spend the time kind of putting in the foundations of stuff. If you're constantly on uneven ground, and there's some indication that some aspect of what you've been dealing with is very uneven ground at the moment, then it helps to have a more sure platform that you can stand on, that you can bounce from here to there or wherever, even just jump up in the air, whatever it is that you want to do, lie down, go to sleep. Like, having that kind of foundation is really, really important moving forwards. But there's something here that I feel you've been denying yourself, Aquarius. And this is why I said, if you don't have those people that maybe you could turn to in moments like this and like this, that could well be the problem right there, because no man is an island. And I mean, I don't want to lecture Aquarians about community, right, because you get it, but I feel like community for Aquarians is often in the abstract rather than in the actual experience. What do I mean by that? Well, Aquarians love humanity, but they're not so fond of humans. Is the way that I feel about it, right? And like I have some I have a degree of empathy with that position. Like it's one that I've held myself. But I really do feel like to get through the next 3 years, community is going to be really, really important. And if there is any way in which you have been ostracized, or you have ostracized yourself, which is quite likely, Aquarius, that this is the thing that needs work. It's not actually about the Four of Wands, it's about addressing what is represented by the energy of the Five of Pentacles. What do you not have that you should have? What do you have? What do you not have that you need? Right? I think about the Five of Pentacles quite often as like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and realizing that we've been kind of trying to pitch for something up here at the top of the pyramid, and actually what we don't have is the security down here. Like everything builds on what comes before. And there's some aspect of your life that has a big hole in it. Things are missing. Is this the big hole? Right? Is this the realization of the big hole? Is it a realization of a big hole that you might have created for yourself? I can't tell you how many times I've suddenly realized that the reason why I haven't got any friends is because I just go nowhere and I speak to no one. Just, oh yeah, that's probably a thing, you know. I'm trying to cover a lot of bases here with you, Aquarius, but it's going to be different subtly for each of you. I hope that there's enough here, though, for you to start to see where the gaps are and where the instability is, because I think it's about not only patching that up, but like really putting some effort into your foundation that is required. Now, where it gets really quite interesting is this Knight of Cups. Again, Pisces energy, just as we saw over here with this Hanged Man who is hanging out, being resisted. The Knight of Cups. All right, there are two different ways that I'm seeing this, and I'm going to share them with you both, and they go off in different directions. So bear with me, right? When the Devil is reversed, and we are no longer subject to the kind of traps that the Devil tends to pull, we have a degree of freedom that we didn't have before, right? Because we've pulled back some of our autonomy, we've pulled back some of our psychic energy, and we can take responsibility for things ourselves, right? If you have found yourself surrounded by people who have been less than clear and less than honest with their intentions, then it could well be that you've gone through your social group and just realised that there are a lot of inauthentic people, a lot of people that you don't want to spend time with, and that's what's caused the feeling of isolation. It's kind of like everybody's fucking out for themselves. You know, maybe there's been some sort of difficult situation that you've been fielding in the last couple of months, right? To wit, then, if you realise that you have indeed been alone in a crowd of people that you thought were your emotional support network and have turned out not to be, then the Devil reversed with the Knight of Cups reversed actually feels like it's kind of positive, because we've stripped things down to its bare bones, we've seen what we've got, and now we can start putting energy into, like I say, energy into the foundation, bringing much more joy and happiness and, good stuff into your life. That's one way that I see this happening here. The other way, though, is that there's a realization that you have kept everybody at arm's length, and that the Knight of Cups reversed is actually the way that you've been dealing with things rather than everybody else. Like this whole period is a lot about realization, and it's about uncomfortable realization, but ultimately uncomfortable realization that leads to there obviously is the answer. I know exactly what I need to do, right? Which ultimately is positive. Like I said, it's a net positive on balance, but just via the route of frustration. Because if you can recognize what it is that you don't have that you need, and if you can recognize the folly of trying to hold on to what has quite clearly gone, then we're already creating an environment whereby space is being permitted for the development of something new, right? A stronger, firmer foundation, not yet realised with this Four of Wands, not showing up quite straight yet, but certainly pushing in the right direction. Now, like I said, which version of this, and maybe it's even a third way that I haven't mentioned, is relevant to you, is going to be different for each of you. But we do know that there is great change up ahead. I think that's clear. Because by next month I would be expecting this Four of Wands not only to be upright, but there to be a lot more energies of the new coming in, because the space has been created, than what we've got going on right now. Because the expansion's there, right? The internal expansion is happening, and it will lead to an external expansion very quickly. But this is the problem here with October. This is the thing that needs to be dealt with. And the thing is, again, with the Eight of Wands being here, and with these Eight of Wands really quite clearly coming into land, the changes that you can effect off the back of all of these realizations can be executed very rapidly. That's what that seems to be. Everything changes really quite rapidly around you once that rigidity has been, flicked over and kind of brushed out of the way. But it does seem to be pushing it to a peak stress point in order for those cracks to happen, enough for you to be able to batter it out. It's like a bird coming out of an egg, right? It's that same thing. It's like smashing on the shell till you get to the point where you can kind of thrash a little bit, and then suddenly you're out on the hello world, I'm here. It's got that kind of quality to it. And we can see that that's what's happening underneath. It may not feel great in the moment while it's happening, but I would expect to see something very, very different on the table by November, I think. Very different. So, I'm going to leave it here for now. I am going to go to the extended. We're going to dig into this energy just a little bit more. See if we can't get some more information about the nature of October for you. So if you'd like to join me over there, you're very welcome to do that. You can do that on Selfie, you can do that on Circle. I would be delighted to see you in either place. If that's not your thing, that's absolutely fine. I just know that it's like, when you're pushing up against the edges of something, there's always going to be friction. It's always going to feel uncomfortable. But the relief that comes on the other side of that, even if there is a brief moment where it seems a little empty, it won't be empty for long. The universe is going to pile all sorts of things in for you, So I shall leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.